Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, a podcast addressing race relations and social issues in hopes that you'll be inspired to do the same. Now, let's begin our conversation with your hosts, Dr. Peter Weinstein and Dr. Philip Nelson.
Welcome to Courageous Conversations. I'm Dr. Peter Weinstein, I think, and I am here with my cohort, Dr. Philip Nelson. Dr. Nelson, always a pleasure to chat with you.
Good morning, Peter. How are you doing? Our 12 listeners that we count on so much.
Well, I hope our 12 listeners are all tuning in, and thank you to Nationwide for continuing to support our insanity, and to Nicole for trying to make us look less insane. We were talking about something before we started the recording, and the fact is that we've been doing these podcasts for over 4 years now, and there's a topic that only comes up every 4 years that's not political that I thought would be a good topic for today. The fact that we're currently, as we record this, in the middle of the Olympics. 30 some odd sports, hundreds of countries, all competing for their country as well as for themselves in a quote unquote peaceful setting. I really enjoy watching the variety of different sports. Now they've got hip hop, break dancing this year, and rock climbing and all sorts of different things. My passion is swimming because my daughter was a swimmer. Looking forward to track and field, which just started, basketball, soccer. So I'm a sports freak to begin with. I'm waiting for them to have cornhole Olympics, but we'll have to wait and see if that happens in Los Angeles in 4 years. So Phil, are you as hooked on the Olympics as I am?
I am, although it's amazing how our conversations become courageous so quickly. I beg to differ that the Olympics aren't political.
Okay. You want to lean into that?
I definitely agree that it's less political. And Team USA is doing a great job. Team France is doing great. Team Brazil is doing pretty good. Team China is doing good. But Team Russia isn't there because of politics. And so it's not as if this is purely a love fest, if you will, in gamesmanship. And it does bring some interesting perspectives to the table. But that's not what we want to focus on. I just thought when you mentioned it, I thought that was a very upbeat presentation of the Olympics, and I have enjoyed it thoroughly. I've enjoyed watching sports that, as you mentioned, I don't normally see. Who knew? I did not know that archery was such a passion in China and South Korea. I didn't recognize that skill has survived its historical origin in those two countries, so much so that they pay homage to it and they have continued to excel in it.
The Olympics create heroes that aren't always winners and winners that aren't always heroes. But it is interesting to watch. There was a swimmer last night from the Cayman Islands. He and his sister, the only two representatives, I believe, from the Cayman Islands. They're both swimmers, and they were both in the swimming competition. An American won a medal, only the second one in 60 years in the 10,000 meter run. So all of these different things, and again, watching Simone Biles recover from the challenges she faced in Tokyo to perform at the level that she has in Paris. It allows me to separate myself from the world news and focus on sports news. And you get frustrated because your teams don't win, but then some team countries that has 6 people in its population wins something. And I think that's just, to me, in the face of all of the world challenges that occupy the news, the Olympics to me help me get focused on other things.
Yes, it does. When the Olympics first started in 776 BC.
You were there.
No, I was born right after that. I'm not that old, but nearly so. The kings of the era, three kings of the era, got together and signed a truce in order to have the very first Olympic. Now, they were actually at war, and this idea of competing in a non-lethal way came up, where families, and honestly, it was the soldiers that completed. The athletes were soldiers essentially, and many of the games, war skills. Basketball wasn't one of them at the time. Tennis wasn't one of them at the time. It was archery, slingshots, shot putting, and yet they made games of them in order to see who, and they wanted to identify the masters, and there was a reputation that came with the winning of those games, which has persevered throughout the Olympic Games. And as much as you're able to find solace and reprieve from the pressures of the day at this time, I find it somewhat noteworthy that even the truce was broken for this Olympic game at the beginning of the Olympic Games with the bombing of the rapid transit system in France. And it's not the first time that that's happened, but the truce that the original kings agreed to, and since then most state leaders agreed to, doesn't seem to be as important anymore. The wars that were going on are still going on. There is no truce.
Right.
In those wars. And because of that, even the Olympics becomes a target.
Yeah, I don't think the Ukrainian soldiers are finding time to watch the Ukrainian athletes as they try to save their country.
And yet Ukraine has a team.
And Israel has a team.
And Israel has a team.
And so your comments at the beginning regarding the politics, yes, there are. And if we go back to, I believe it was 1980, when Jimmy Carter decided that the U.S. would not field a team to go to Russia because of issues that were going on at that point in time, there has always been politics integrated into the Olympics. Again, as you noted, a lot of it was how the Olympics started, between a truce, and I mean, the marathon itself was created to be 26.2 miles based upon the distance from Marathon, Greece to Athens, Greece. And so there is a battle, a war, competition foundational to the Olympics. But to me, it's 2 weeks in Paris, and then 4 years from now, 2 weeks in London. The competition is on the pitch, it's on the field, it's on the basketball court. That's where I like to think of the competition happening. And maybe people shouldn't be representing their countries as much as representing themselves, but I think there's a certain amount of energy that comes when you're wearing the red, white, and blue and representing your country in a quote unquote competition.
Not to mention that the most successful teams have the equivalent of state support. And so you're definitely representing your country in that regard. Now recognize that at least in the United States, that state support is public support. We have a system by which, we have an Olympic committee that's volunteer, and it's not necessarily government supported. But the Russian team and the Eastern Bloc teams of old were state supported primarily. As a matter of fact, the games have evolved. It was supposed to be for amateurs only, until we found our high school graduates or our college graduates in basketball playing pros from other countries. I don't know if the Olympics was better for it or not. But again, I was a child when this was happening, when they were sticking to the amateur rule, even though it was clear that some of the Eastern Bloc nations had 45-year-old men on their gymnastics teams, etc., in the shot put or whatever. But it was very clear when you saw college graduates playing 28-year-old counterparts on the other team in basketball. I don't know if the game has gotten better because of that, if the Olympics are any better because of that. I enjoy watching the Dream Team, except that at this very moment, when just before we started our podcast, our dream team had a 34-point lead over Puerto Rico. Whereas we used to see college stars use the Olympics if it happened to hit their year. College stars use the Olympics as the next stage. I'm not sure it was better. It was good to see Nadal and Djokovic play again.
I agree with you. And I remember the transition from amateur only to professional. And I think basketball started it. And then a lot of it was a response to the fact that the international teams were quote unquote professional, or basically they were employed by the governments to play basketball or hockey or whatever the case may be. It really was it was different back when you didn't get $100,000 for a gold medal. You got a gold medal. And it is interesting to try to balance that out as somebody who's an American and rah American, seeing the U.S. basketball team dominate as it has, at least in this game, takes some of the luster off. But watching other sports like rowing or archery or shooting that don't seem to have the focus, again, turns the direction away from the money, but at the individual. Or even watching the Olympic gymnastics team, women's and men's, compete and recognizing that the amount of time and energy and commitment and effort that they put in to get to that level and be one of 5 or 6 representatives of the country. All of that is just, to me, an important aspect of just directing me away from all of the other challenges that are out there. So to me, sports has always been a distraction. And I think sometimes the news has redirected me, but I really do look at sports as a distraction from, not to say that sports don't have its own issues, but as a distraction for me to use to get away from all of the other gut-wrenching issues that are out there.
Sometimes sports reminds me of those gut-wrenching issues too. And the makeup of the Olympics, sometimes I have to say, sometimes reminds me of that. I'm like you, I get immersed in the game, right? But the pageantry of the Olympics is a very political moment for me. When you see the comparisons of the delegations that come from various countries because of their size, largely because of their size and or their wealth, I can't help but extend that to life issues. I can't help. You mentioned the two delegates from Cayman Island. You reminded me of the Jamaican bobsled team. The fact that they had to go through all those special efforts just to learn how to bobsled, because they couldn't keep ice in Jamaica well enough to train. I mean, and the fact that they did as well as they did, the fact that, it also instills a fascinating curiosity for me in cultural development, in that why is it that the Chinese are so adept and proficient in diving? Why is it that South Korea and China have decided to protect archery as a skill, so much so that they are the masters of it across the globe, comparatively speaking? Why is it that Australia and America appear to be water masters when it comes to swimming?
Well, a lot of it is in the U.S. is money put into athletes, and you obviously don't have the same financial wherewithal in the Cayman Islands as you do. But what's interesting is Marchand, the very successful French swimmer, is actually coached by the same gentleman who coached Michael Phelps. So what we have done is we have started to spread our coaching and skills to help the world as well. The other thing I like about the Olympics is I learn geography, and you learn where all of these little countries are on the map, because when I was growing up, there were only like 107 countries, and now there's like over 200, some of which are 1 or 2 years of age. And I'm trying to remember the first Olympics I remember, which I think were 1968, which of course had its own share of issues with Carlos and Smith and the Black Power movement. as you are aware. And then Bob Beamon just killing the long jump record in Mexico City. But those were the first Olympics that I remember. And I just know that I look forward to every 4 years for Summer Olympics and similarly for Winter Olympics because of the competitions, because of the individual stories that come out of it. And I think because, as I said earlier, we find heroes who show up out of nowhere and their story is one to tell. And I, as a veterinarian, I think it's sometimes we need to look for heroes within our own profession as well, who become leaders or become influencers or have a story. I think it's the stories of the Olympics that are just as rewarding to me as the competitions.
Well, that is true. It is revealing to understand the dedication, the result, the results of what it takes to become a gold medalist or even an Olympian who doesn't, someone worthy to be an Olympian and to be at the top of the world's order in whichever area you chose. Every athlete there has sacrificed something in order to achieve skill that they're now representing. And it's a broader statement about what it takes to achieve something worth having, worthwhile, even in life, not just in sports.
I was thinking, what if we fought, instead of having guns and tanks and grenades, what if the world leaders had to have an archery shootout and see who had the highest score, or wrestle each other and see who won, or maybe they had their own decathlon and instead of battling it out where people die, we battle it out just with blood, sweat, and tears. And I know I'm being a little bit jaded in this comment, but it's just to me, it's just to me watching a 0.01 difference between first and second, or world records and Olympic records, and it's just, again, I'm just excited about the Olympics and the run up to the Olympics and all of the stuff that goes into it. And I just think I'm encouraging that people find a distraction that they need so that the world and the pressures of the world just don't sit on their shoulders. So whatever that distraction is, and in some cases, it's this therapy session that Phil and I have between the Olympics. We have therapy sessions. But I think if you can find a distraction that helps you focus on yourself and focus on other things besides the challenges of the world, I think it's good for your mental health.
Well, I don't think anybody will deny that. I think everybody has to take a break in order to recenter themselves. I just think that, I guess, I'm trying to support your enthusiasm and your optimism here. And yet I keep putting dampers on things like, even though Marshawn may have trained in the U.S., that is still privilege and privilege. If the Olympics truly was means to promote peace and non-lethal competition, then it would seek ways of better inclusion and training of the lesser or less wealthy or less populated countries, and to give them a more even basis for competition. At the moment, it is nationalism that tends to sour, at the same time promote sports and non-lethal competition. I found it interesting that the swimming community has no problem with Marshawn or anybody coming to America to learn. But Marshawn clearly was able to do it either because he got a scholarship because the school wanted him to represent them, or he was able to afford living in the United States while going to college, But there may be just as much talent in Indonesia or some island someplace that could also benefit from that. And I just think that type of a program would be our next step in Olympic development.
Well, Phil, thank you for neutralizing all of my excitement. I appreciate it. And to all of our listeners, just listen to the things I had to say during this positivity-based, Olympics-focused conversation. I respect Phil for keeping me balanced, and thank you for putting a different lean on this conference. We had no idea where it was going to begin with. And thank you to Nationwide, and thank you to Nicole. Phil, anything else you want to say to make my day?
I actually think Simone Biles is the best athlete I've seen in a long time. And I think she's done a wonderful job balancing the physicality of gymnastics with accepting that that doesn't work without mental health. And I admire the way she has navigated her travails in Tokyo and come back from that with a without raising the political specter of mental health. We seem to always get embroiled in when we start talking about recognizing it and treating it. And frankly, I think that was the basis for your desire to have this discussion. And I apologize to you for undermining it the way I did. It wasn't on purpose. It was really just to try to provide a balance of the history of the Olympics and where we are and what it means, or more importantly, what it could mean. I see it more than just a source of distraction. I see it as part of the solution to our need for distraction. I'm right with you there. Isn't the Olympics going to be in LA in 4 years?
The Olympics will be in LA in 4 years, and we'll hopefully still be doing podcasts in the future going forward. But the mental health side of it is really where I wanted to go. So for all of our listeners out there, find your distraction, find your conversation, find your sport. For me, getting on a bike, which I'll do later this afternoon, or going to the gym. For Phil, it's probably golf. And although I think golf is frustrating. But until we meet again, my friend.
Oh, by the way, so does Phil. That golf is frustrating. But that frustration can be a distraction. I enjoyed the discussion this morning, Peter. And to all of our listeners, thank you for bearing with us. We hope you enjoyed this excursion from the norm of our conversations. And we want to thank Nationwide again for supporting us.
I took the gold medal, and that's the end of this conversation.
Thank you for joining us for another courageous conversation. Be sure to follow us and check back next week for more.